Hey there, Skullheads. I'm Snags.
And I'm old Silky.
And tonight we're going to talk about the mighty Pink Floyd. We've got Mr. Clean back with us. So I've known Mr. Clean for a while, and the three bands I've heard him rant about the most, the three bands he's obsessed with, are Judas Priest, Tool, and Pink Floyd. And we already had him on for the Judas Priest and Tool episode, so you got to have Mr. Clean back if you're going to talk Pink Floyd. This guy owns a book. He owns a book that analyzes every single Pink Floyd song. It's this big, thick, gigantic Bible, Pink Floyd Bible, and it's got an analysis of every fucking song. So,
and I've got it with me tonight because I'm preaching Pink Floyd.
Oh, good. Lay it on us.
I
will say Pink Floyd probably has the most box sets of their entire catalog multiple times. In my collecting, I've had several really expensive Pink Floyd box sets, including the early years, which is an amazing collection. The stuff that came out in the 90s, you had that naked woman coming up out of the water, and the water's like a snake around her. Those were, and that pretty much collected the essential albums. That was pretty good, but they have certainly
this guy's got every box set
reissued so much, repack, but
hey, your shirt matches my mug, man.
Oh, nice. Misfits.
He's wearing a Misfits shirt, drinking out of Misfits mug.
All right,
back to what you're saying.
I was just gonna say, as recordings improve, I think they're gonna constantly try to give you the most pristine Pink Floyd. It's like their main goal to capture that just sonically perfect recording. So a lot of their music is just, you have to hear it on a good stereo. You have to have the CD version, or the vinyl too is phenomenal.
Well, speaking of collectibles, just a little bit off topic here. Silky was texting me earlier today and discovered that there's this rare deep cut TV series that he found online. Just to digress a little bit, because whenever you turn on a podcast and they say it's about a certain subject and they talk about other shit, I know how frustrating that is, but we're going to do it anyways. So suck it the fuck up. So there's a TV show from probably late 70s, early 80s that without this show, you wouldn't have Hill Street Blues. You wouldn't have Sopranos.
Miami
Vice. You wouldn't have Breaking Bad. None of this stuff would be possible without the trailblazing and deep cut, little known series that Silky discovered online right now. What was the website? Like Classic TV Memories or something?
It's a DVD website, and you can go to like DVD Lady and find some really rare shit. And I'm obsessing about this show called The Rookies, and I'm trying to find.
I used to watch that as a kid.
Yeah, I'm trying to find a collect, because in season 3, the pilot is 2 episodes of SWAT is from that show, and I would just like to see it. So I was looking to see if you could stream it somehow or whatever.
And you ran across this classic deep cut show.
It's called The Misadventures of Sheriff Lobo.
Oh shit!
And, you can't. 2 seasons.
And this is the sheriff
1980.
This is the Sheriff Lobo that was in BJ and the Bear, right?
BJ and the Bear, exactly.
Yeah, so which became BJ and the Seven Lady Truckers when the ratings went down.
Right. Claude Akins, who you met.
I met Claude Akins. I was an extra on a movie. Johnny Cash plays like a pool shark. I think it's called The Baron or something like that. The TV movie with Johnny Cash as a pool shark, and Claude Akins was the bad guy in that. And I had lunch with Claude Akins. and I remember seeing Claude Akins on an episode of The Twilight Zone, and
Yes.
I was asking him about Rod Serling and all that kind of stuff. But I was just sitting there right next to him having lunch with right next to Sheriff Lobo. It was fucking crazy.
Claude Akins.
Yeah, the Claude Akins.
I've heard Claude could clear a room with a beer fart.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing was, though, I was like 14 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I was not really aware of what a legend Johnny Cash was. And I'm like, I've got pictures. I found that thing online and I watched it and I took screenshots of 14-year-old me sitting on a bench watching Johnny Cash play pool. He's like fucking 15 feet away from me.
I saw that movie on YouTube or something because I remember
it's out there.
Like, God, it's hilarious.
Anyways, the misadventures of Sheriff Lobo, the pivotal. It was what did I gotta find what I wrote. When you texted me that, and then we'll get back to the subject at hand. But my response was, it was a pivotal work. Here we go. It was a pivotal work that not only reflected the zeitgeist of the era, but that also changed the course of television history for years to come. And basically, we need to do a deep dive 10-episode series on the misadventures of Sheriff Lobo.
Yeah, profile each episode, 2 seasons. Really bring it to the people. And
all the cast members and their extended family and their pets.
Sure.
We got to just really dive down. And
well,
Mr. Clean is cracking up at this comedy routine.
Out of the room.
Mr. Clean's thinking about 7 minutes of his life he'll never get back right now.
So on to Pink Floyd. Oh, hold on a second. Oh, wait, the phone's ringing.
We never get calls.
Snags and Silky show. Right, this is the ghost of Syd Barrett.
Oh,
I heard y'all are doing a Pink Floyd episode.
Syd Barrett.
Holy shit, Syd Barrett. The ghost of Syd Barrett.
Syd, the last phone call we got, we actually heard from Buddy Holly once.
Right, yeah. I jam with him every now and then. Yeah, me and Hendrix. And Lemmy said to say hi.
Hey, Syd, have you seen Roger Waters' dad down there anywhere? I mean, up there, sorry. No offense.
Don't get me started on that. His dad has a message for Roger. Get the fuck over it, you stupid, whiny little bitch. I fucking died. It's over. Lots of people's father die. You dumb, whiny little piece of fucking shit. Get the fuck up. Stop writing songs about him, okay? He doesn't like it. He's tired of it. The first time he was a bit flattered. Now he just thinks you're a wanker.
Hey, Sid, can you get mushrooms or acid where you're at?
Oh yeah. No, that's I like staying crazy. Hey, I noticed we got Silky's little son on here.
Uh-oh.
Come on up, little chap.
El Condor. What's going on, buddy?
Check the merch. We got mugs. We got stickers.
Pink Floyd rules.
Pink Floyd rules.
Okay.
I don't really know if I pronounced that well.
You're good.
Okay.
Good job.
We got action figures.
Action
we got Lego sets. We got everything.
All right. There he goes.
Also, you break it, you buy it.
Oh.
That's right. You break it, you buy it. Don't go in the Snags and Silky store online and break shit.
We're going to be knocking shit over.
Yeah. Looks like
not that popular anymore. El Condor can interrupt him.
Yeah.
Looks like Syd has dropped off the line there. So let's get on with the episode.
Well, let's get going. Early days, I believe they got together in 1962.
Yeah, so Roger Waters and Nick Mason are studying architecture at London Polytechnic. This is a band of architects, which is interesting.
Yeah, they were all very artists. If you think about like the Beatles, they all went to some
art school. Yeah, all these the Kinks, all these bands met in art school. Yeah. But but Pink Floyd specifically were studying architecture. Roger Waters and Nick Mason studying architecture. They first played together in a band called Sigma 6. And that was mainly R&B covers. Sigma 6, here's the lineup for Sigma 6. Roger Waters on bass, Nick Mason on drums, Richard Wright on keyboard. And then we're missing somebody, right? The guy who just called, he wasn't in this version of the band.
Oh, no.
Keith Noble on vocals, Clive Metcalf on guitar, Vernon Thompson on vocals. I'm Vernon Thompson. I used to be in a band with the Pink Floyd. That's right. Give me my fish and chips. I don't want to hear about it. So that band went through
Sigma 6.
That band actually went through quite a few name changes, one of which hysterically is the Megadeths.
Yep.
Yeah.
They're briefly called the Megadeths. And that was back when Dave Mustaine was, a sperm in his dad's balls. So then you had the Architectural Abdabs, or the Abdabs. I don't know where that comes from. Leonard's Lodgers, and then the Screaming Abdabs. So they were really big. Does anybody know what Abdab means?
No.
So Architectural Abdabs, the Abdabs, and the Screaming Abdabs. They were big into the Abdabs. Anyways, there's a lot of the band names. In 1964, Bob Close, guitar player, joins, and Syd Barrett joined. They're first just playing guitar. And Barrett and Waters knew each other from Cambridge. The band changed their name to the T-Set, T-E-A. And then Keith Noble and Vernon Thompson leave the band in 65. Clive Metcalf hits the fucking bricks. And that left a lineup of Waters, Mason, Wright, Close, and Barrett. So Bob Close is the fifth wheel here.
And Bob Close was this close to being an international star.
Nice.
And
dad joke alert. Yeah.
He asked out.
Yep. He's another one of those guys. I was in Pink Floyd. That's great, man.
Yeah, whatever.
Watch my windshield.
Yeah.
Fill my petrol.
Oh, I'd like unleaded, please. So while they're called the T-Set, they basically they're at a gig and there's another band called the T-Set. Like, shit. So they got to change their name. This happens in so many biographies too. Like Van Halen, they were called Mammoth, and they discovered some other band was called Mammoth, and they had to change their name. It happens a lot. So, Syd Barrett was a fan of a couple musicians, Pink Anderson and Floyd Council. A lot of people know this story, and so they started calling themselves the Pink Floyd. They just kind of combined those two names. They were blues musicians or blues jazz. I don't know too much about Pink Anderson and Floyd Council.
But they also called themselves the Pink Floyd Sound. Was that later?
That was like 68. They toyed with the name Pink Floyd. It was the Pink Floyd, the Pink Floyd Sound, and then it just
eventually becomes Pink Floyd.
Yeah.
And their first kind of residency, their version of the Cavern Club was a place called the UFO Club or the UFO Club. I've seen documentaries where scenesters from back in the day, they used both terms, but it was capital UFO, and people would call it the UFO Club or the UFO Club. And that's where they evolved from R&B to more psychedelic stuff. And they had there was a older guy in the community who I think he was a professor at one of their schools. And Mr. Clean, chime in if you have any details on this stuff. But he was experimenting with lights and stuff, and he would put all these weird filters on lights and do all this kind of weird effects just on his own. And they were renting a room in his house, and that's where they were rehearsing. And they started incorporating that into their rehearsals. And then they brought that to the UFO Club, and they basically kind of invented the psychedelic light show that bands like Hawkwind and a lot of other bands.
They became like the house band, and they would just get there, and everybody would get just totally blasted, and they would just jam, go on jams for like an hour. And I know that story about that dude, that professor with the lighting thing. I can't think of his name, but I was seeing something about that in a documentary, pretty recently, and I was like, I hadn't heard about that before. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's in a couple books. I read one book on Syd Barrett all the way through, and there's a Pink Floyd book I've read like 25% of it, and that guy's in both of those books. So Bob Close in 1965 leaves the band right before they start recording. He reportedly wasn't comfortable with their shift towards psychedelia, right? They should have stuck with R&B and gone nowhere.
Bitch can't hold the smoke.
Yeah, that's right. Bitch can't hold the smoke. GTFO. So then you have the first classic Pink Floyd lineup: Syd Barrett, guitar, lead vocals, also main songwriter. Roger Waters, bass vocals, Richard Wright, keyboards, vocals, and Nick Mason on drums. And they recorded their first two singles, Arnold Lane and See Emily Play, in 1967. What just coming out of the gate with that shit,
Yeah, those singles and the playlist. I was very meticulous to track down all of the singles, the non-album cuts, and I put them in a pretty close to chronological order. There's a couple that some people may not know, like the Vegetable Man and some of the other obscure ones are in there.
What is it? Vegetable Man, and there's one about Scream. There's a couple that are reflecting the last couple songs that Syd Barrett wrote, and we'll kind of get to that.
When the early years came out, it broke. I don't know, almost 6 months before they, in an auction, they had 6 songs that were basically Pink Floyd's very first recordings. Lucy, Leave, Double O, Bo, Remember Me, Walk With Me, Sydney, Butterfly, and then a cover of the Slim Harpo song, I'm a King Bee.
Yeah, and there's some what was the guy? Bo Diddley sound and stuff in there. Bo Diddley, apparently Syd Barrett was obsessed with Bo Diddley. So
yeah,
he was a huge influence on all of them.
It was called Scream Thy Last Scream.
Well, that's later. So the early stuff you're talking about is I'm a King Bee, Butterfly. That's a Bo Diddley sound and stuff.
Yeah, and that was all 66.
Right. And then the last couple songs that Syd Barrett writes are really, he's already starting to disintegrate his personality, and they reflect his state of mind. Vegetable Man and Scream Thy Last Scream, although his solo album actually has some good shit on it. I went and listened to that when I read that Syd Barrett book, and there's actually some good shit on there. So he managed to write some interesting stuff, and Dave Gilmour was coming around and helping him with that album. I think Richard Wright played on it. They were helping him along. But so those two, See Emily Play and Arnold Lane, come out, and then they follow that up with Piper at the Gates of Dawn, which what do you so Mr. Clean, we brought you on because you're the Pink Floyd expert. Tell us your thoughts on Piper at the Gates of Dawn.
Yeah, I mean, it's when I discovered Pink Floyd, I'm like 8th grader in high school, and like, because we didn't have middle school, and I remember sitting in my desk in Spanish class, and somebody had carved with a knife into the desk, Pink Floyd, The Wall, and that's kind of when I was. I was like, Pink Floyd, The Wall, what's that all about? And I'm an 8th grader, and, in Atlanta, we had like 2 rock stations, and I know they played, a few Pink Floyd songs, but at the same time, I wasn't a Pink Floyd fan. So that's kind of the Pink Floyd I started, appreciating was some of the later,
Yeah,
the
same here.
middle of their
I
career.
I can specifically remember, and then I'll let you finish. But you triggered this memory, and it's relevant. And summer camp, I went to one of those summer day camps where your mom pawns you off so she can keep going to work every day in the summer, and you're not out breaking windows and causing trouble, which I managed to do anyways. But summer day camp, and we all get dropped off in the morning, be taken off on field trips to fucking Stone Mountain or whatever, and drive back in the school bus at the end of the day. And I can specifically remember 1978 summer day camp, driving back in the school bus, and somebody's got the radio on, just blasting. The whole bus is singing, "Hey, teacher, leave them kids alone."
Yeah,
it was the fucking anthem. I mean, it was a fucking anthem. But anyways, yeah, that's when I started cluing in, who's this guy Pink Floyd who's doing these songs?
Yeah, right. So then, I became a huge Pink Floyd fan, but we just wasn't access, to some of the old stuff. I mean, I didn't even know there was no internet. There was,
right.
You didn't know what bands had done, in the past. So, we just knew, Dark Side of the Moon, and we'd heard that one song, off of Metal where the guy says, "I'm going to cut you into little pieces," which was Nick Mason actually that said that. And so there's that one song, but you didn't know about the old, you didn't know about the old stuff. So it all was like, Dark Side of the Moon and Wish You Were Here. Nobody even played Animals at all on Atlanta radio. I didn't even know about Animals until like I was 11th grader. And so go into college, and then you meet other people and, of course, other substances, and everybody's, having their own little psychedelic, situations. And then that's when I got introduced to some of the older Pink Floyd, and it was kind of hard for me to go back and say, because I didn't like it. I just like, man, I don't like this kind of Pink Floyd, but you kind of become like the in thing, everybody wanted to listen and talk about Syd Barrett and listen to kind of force yourself to listen to a lot of these old, these older albums. And I was not that kind of like British pop, fan. And so I've never been like a gigantic Syd Barrett fan. But then when we started talking about doing like this podcast, I mean, trust me, I listened to all those albums. I mean, all of them, all the More soundtrack, the, Piper at the Gates of Dawn, Saucer Full of Secrets, the Ummagumma, Adam Hot Mother. I mean, we listened to them all the time. Sometimes I felt like I was forcing myself.
Yeah, especially like Ummagumma and Adam Hart Mother, a bit tedious. But there was a period there where, like, I think Syd Barrett had some songwriting chops, and you got songs. You got songs like Astronomy Domini, Lucifer Sam, Power Talk H, which is wild, Interstellar Overdrive, and Bike are all on this album. Yeah. But then he leaves, and it took them a few albums to find themselves. They're just fucking around on Ummagumma and Adam Hart Mother, in my opinion. We'll get to those albums, but
going back and listening to it recently, I went back and I listened to it, some of the old stuff, the Piper, the Gates of Dawns. I listened to Saucer Full of Secret, everything, front to back, and I was like, man, this is. I appreciated it more, and I did always have, songs that I really liked. I liked See Emily Play. I liked, Arnold
Lane.
Arnold Lane is a really cool song. Saucer Full of Secrets is a great song. Careful with that axe, Eugene. It makes my hair stand up on the back of my neck. Some of those kind of, I mean, I loved, like a good number of the songs.
Right.
But some of it, even like Bike, Bike is a funny song. It's, it's British.
That's all it's supposed to be, I think.
Yeah, it's a weird one.
Like, man, I want to rock, I was always more of a rocker. So I like the more rocking Pink Floyd that came a little bit later.
It's really two different bands. It's like, and this is a bad analogy because Van Hagar is worthless, but it's like the difference between Van Hagar and Van Halen, because you've got two different band leaders,
well, it's a good analogy is Deep Purple and Pink Floyd, where They had some albums before the album that everybody talks about, and they had a different singer.
Yeah, they had a different singer that
Yeah.
first the
First three Deep
yeah.
Purple albums.
What
You
was
got
his-
Rod Ellis and
Rod Evans, wasn't it?
Rod Evans.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the drummer for Foghat.
Now, can you imagine if Syd Barrett hadn't gone crazy and they'd brought David Gilmour on? What kind of stuff
I really think David Gilmour.
with?
I really think David Gilmour saved the direction of the band. His guitar playing is just so.
Otherwise, it would have just been full albums about Roger whining about his dad dying early on. Without David Gilmour balancing him out. Before Roger took over the band.
David jumped in because he needed a check. He was like, "These guys got a Piper the Gates of Dawn, and they got a album out. I'm not so sure about this music they're playing, but this sounds like a good paycheck."
He was also he was really good friends with them, from the beginning. It wasn't like they just hired some random yokel. He was really good friends with them.
I think Syd Barrett actually wanted Dave to take his place.
Well, what I read in the books was that Syd, basically Dave, they were a 5-piece for a while because Syd was starting to kind of lose it during the live shows, and they'd bring Dave in, and Dave would just play Syd's parts, and then he would start singing some of Syd's parts when Syd was really, but they were a 5-piece for a while, and then eventually they're driving to a gig, and it's the 4 of them and the last person they were supposed to pick up was Syd, and someone, probably Roger, was like, "Should we even pick him up?" Like, nah. And that was the pivotal moment. Wow. And they just drove to the gig, and it took a while for Syd to realize what was going on. Like, they would tell him the gig got canceled or there are no more gigs.
That's rough, man.
Yeah, it wasn't really like he wanted to leave. He was just, too nuts to stay, basically.
Yeah.
So there are you can find photos of the 5-piece Pink Floyd lineup that lasted for a while there.
What I wanted to say about Piper is every band has to start somewhere, and like you said, Snags, Astronomy Domini, Interstellar Overdrive. There's some really good riffage in here, but where I really enjoy Pink Floyd is really metal on.
My prime Floyd is Metal Through Animals, and then a few songs off of The Wall, which I know you disagree with, but we'll talk about that when we get there.
That's horrible, correct? Thanks.
I love that record, but
it's just too much fucking whining. But anyways, so the next one, and Norman Smith was producing these early albums. A cat named Norman Smith.
Yeah, before you jump on Saucer Full of Secrets, they did just a slew of singles at this point after the first album. Apples and Oranges, Paint Box was a single. And then these are really obscure. In the Beechwoods and Vegetable Man and Scream Thy Last Scream. Those were songs that Syd wanted those to be on the first album. And
I always liked that Paint Box song. That was one of the ones I remembered. Like, I really listened to that a lot.
Yeah, and the Candy and a Currant Bun, and they were very different sounding songs. And then It Would Be So Nice and Julia Dream, Point Me at the Sky. And there was a single of Careful with That Axe, Eugene, that's a little different than what would end up later. So pretty cool shit. But Saucer Full of Secrets, I played the living hell out of that record in high school. I just didn't really quite get the first one. I do remember buying that first record at the Metronome, where I would go.
Yeah, I remember that record store. Yeah, over in Midtown.
They had a huge record area with all these blues. They had a really big blues section. I would go in there religiously and just slowly look through their blues collection, Muddy Waters, all the names that you know. And there was a cat in there that some Pink Floyd had come out, and I was like, what's their first at? Like, I was always, when I got into a band, I wanted to see what their first album sounded like.
Right.
And you were overwhelmed, but you look at Pink Floyd and you know Dark Side of the Moon and all these, but I didn't know what is their first album, you know? And the guy handed me, it was in the clear long box, just all clear plastic, and it was Piper at the Gates of Dawn. And I'm like, good God, this is crazy. The whole thing just looked weird to me. I was probably 15.
It's early weird 60s shit, you know?
Yeah, just the album cover itself was almost a kaleidoscope, and I was like, oh wow. And just the album, the song titles, you know, Power Talk, and you know, but I rode my bike home and put that on, and I was like, you know, like you said, Mr. Clean, I like really tried to like it more than it was, but you know,
it's hard to go backwards. You know, from masterpieces.
But a lot of bands, they have to start somewhere. So it's I almost give that album a pardon. I do like about 5 or 6 songs off of it that I always go to.
No, they're good at they're good albums. I mean, but you could see them laying down the you know the DNA for like trying to do different things.
Yeah, you can
sounds.
Yeah. You can hear hints of the later Pink Floyd, especially in Adam Hart, Mother, and Ummagumma.
But it's very similar to Judas Priest, where the second album really almost lets the curtain drop a little bit, where you can see where they're going with the second album. Because Let There Be More Light, Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun.
That's a great song.
Saucer Full of Seek. Those are just really.
It's the interesting thing about this album too is you have the whole band. It's like a 4-wheel drive band. Kind of, they're all contributing to the songwriting. The first song, the lead vocals are Richard Wright and David Gilmour. The second song, Richard Wright is singing lead vocals. Then Roger Waters, Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun, is Roger Waters. You're really seeing him start to flex his songwriting. And then Corporal Clegg is Gilmour, Mason, and Wright all singing. And
that's a great song.
Seesaw is Richard Wright singing. And then you got one Syd Barrett song on here at the end, Jug Band Blues. The thing about this album, I think, is even though it's mostly the members of the band who were contributing to those later masterpieces, Syd Barrett's DNA is still all over this album as far as just the sound of the band. It sounds more similar to the first album than it does to those other albums. That the other guys hadn't really discovered their sonic identity yet. They're still kind of acting out the sonic identity of Syd Barrett, in my opinion. But there's some good tunes on here for sure.
Yeah, and then so their third album was a soundtrack. Now, Pink Floyd at that time, they were, you know, they weren't doing like live shows to make money. They were doing a lot of soundtracks. There were a lot of experimental things. Basically, if anyone reached out, hey, would you guys lay some? They did it. They didn't give a shit.
And
so they were doing a lot of experimental.
The cat who reached out here is Barbet Schroeder, who later directed a classic film, which I love, and you love too, Silky, called Barfly.
Yeah,
so Barbet Schroeder did the Charles Bukowski movie.
Mickey Rourke.
Yeah, with Mickey Rourke.
Yeah.
But this movie, which I've never seen, is Barbara Schroeder's first film. Have you ever seen the movie?
Yeah, I saw this. So I had that early years collection, and it was chock full of all these movies,
Right.
actual movies that it did soundtracks for. And I don't remember the movie, but or the
Probably
name of
just
it.
60s weirdness.
There was one where they do the soundtrack for a guy who tries to get a girl to look in the hood of his car, and then she looks in, or it might have been another guy, but he slams the hood down, and now
Nice.
he's got this head he's trying to hide or put somewhere, and Pink Floyd does the music for it, and it's all real trippy, black and white, very British. And then there was some just experimental things. There's one in that early years thing. It's like 9. It's numbered 1 through 9, and it's all the same title. But the music's just a bit long in the tooth, a bit tedious to suffer through. And
Yeah.
I think the obsessive guy who wants to hear it, but you're not gonna put that on. There's no way you're
and that was below their standards. I mean, they weren't having to try
Yeah.
too hard to do that kind of stuff.
It's just them. I'm marathoned all these albums.
Noodling. They're noodling.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's just them noodling.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's their Lulu.
Yeah. The more soundtrack, though, I will say, has the Nile song, which
it's a good song.
Is just the heaviest song. It's like their version of Summertime Blues, just very heavy, like the Blue Cheer, just a really, really kick-ass tune. And then there's Cymbeline is real Pink Floyd-y, trippy, and then more blues. Spanish Piece was always funny. That's at the very end. But that was good. And then there's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 5 like non-album things that I threw in after more on the playlist. Hollywood, the theme from More Blues alternative version, Seabirds, which was an instrumental, and then Embryo from a movie called Picnic. So they were doing these, adding songs to a bunch of different movies around at that time, 68, 69.
God, they wasted a lot of our time.
They really
should have
did.
Putting out some good stuff during those days,
I know.
man. I know it was interesting, but come on, guys.
And then they do Omagoma, which is kind of this thrown together compilation of various stuff.
The first record is 4 songs live, and then it's like each member does pre-Kiss solo albums.
That's exactly what I was thinking of. You got each member does a solo song, and they're just alternating, a Wright song, a Waters song, another Waters song, Gilmour song, a Mason song, and it's just, I don't even remember anything off of this.
Grantchester Meadows, several species of small furry animals. That's a real twisted, just bizarre. I remember the Grand Vizier's Garden Party, but again, this is a perfect example of, I have to like everything Pink Floyd does. I have to like this album. I love the album cover for Omagoma.
Yeah, classic album cover.
And then it was cool to hear Careful What That Axe Eugene live. That's the reason to have this album. Astronomy.
That's the only reason.
That side 1 and side 2 of the 4 live songs. That's really it. The other stuff is just them.
It's just noodling. It's them
flexing
fucking around.
Airing it out, because
each band member brought some jam demos, and they just slapped the jam demos on the album.
Yeah, but they were even doing dumber stuff than that. They were trying to make songs and music out of no instruments. Like, I'm going to stretch a rubber band across a coffee cup and put a coat hanger or a paper clip through there, and I'm going to boing it, and then we're going to record it and see if I can make a song out of, like, using no traditional.
That's basically a syndrome called the too much acid syndrome.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Oh man, this is profound. I'm going to tap a matchstick on the table and record it and put an echo on there and pick my nose and
Right.
Yeah,
like-
it was a huge waste of time, and they knew it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's the thing.
And to think about, we're talking about Pink Floyd. What other bands at that time were doing the same thing, had record deals, and were just recording, who, just
cricket
God bless
noises,
America.
fucking.
Yeah. So the next album, Adam Hart Mother, you had a 24-minute orchestra, just long-winded bullshit thing. It's unlistenable. It's unlistenable. I know the rest of the band has said, "Oh God, that I don't." They don't.
They don't look back on it fondly.
To me, if the next songs, if Summer of '68 and Fat Old Son, I like those. But then the end of that album has them, somebody at a sink, washing dishes, and people coming in to sit down to have bread. You're like, what are you doing? Like, who puts that on and wants to hear that?
Yeah, that's profound, man. It's profound.
So,
But
again, a classic album cover, the cows.
I don't know. I think the album cover leaves a little bit to be desired, in my opinion, too. It's just a fucking cow looking at you.
Well, I mean, when I say class, it's recognizable. Like, as soon as you see it, So on that level, it's popular. But
right. I think those two shitty albums is kind of profound, though. Ummagumma and Adam Hart Mother. There's a few little decent things here and there, but I think that's when Roger Waters kind of stepped up and said, we're fucking off too much. It's time to either
we're better than this.
And he took the leadership and started writing the songs and coming up with, laying the groundwork. Even that early for Dark Side of the Moon, he was working on that in his mind, and he started writing stuff about that early on.
Yeah, Gilmour was writing too, but Roger Waters was kind of giving it all structure.
The next thing they did, though, was Zabriskie Point, which is another hippie, just really tough movie to get through. And for the people that had never heard it, I included the entire soundtrack in the playlist.
Nice.
And there's like different takes and stuff. So for the collector.
Completist.
It's in there. But really, for me, everything starts with metal.
Yeah, metal. And you can hear hints of this style that they finally started dropping in full album form. You can hear hints of it in Ummagumma and Adam Hart Mother. But here you have a full album where everything just comes together, and I loved this album. I had it on vinyl.
Yeah.
I had a cassette tape with this and Houses of the Holy on one on each side, and those two albums were great. Those were great to kind of play back to back. I played the shit out of this album when I was a teenager.
Yeah. Seamus, Echoes.
I'm gonna have to do that.
I used to put Echoes on all the time. Love that album. Obscured by Clouds has some really good moments, but again,
wait, we're gonna move on.
Time out, man.
Okay, well,
you got One of These Days, fucking awesome album with the instrumental. Yeah, Fearless, San Tropez.
Yeah,
we weren't going to go song by song, so
we absolutely have to with these albums.
It's kind of cool though, but like during One of These Days, you got David Gilmour and Roger Waters are both playing different basses. They're both playing bass in that opening, and so there's a lot going on there that you
fucking badass. I get chills when I hear that song.
Yeah,
which is pretty cool.
If I were ever to fly a jet, I would have to have that song playing as I,
This year, bombing the village, just
zooming through the clouds, just killing,
bombing the village,
killing everything that moves. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
A fucking killer song.
All that wind noise done with synthesizers and stuff. I mean, they have some pretty cool.
And that's them taking that, noodling and applying it to, shorting and bringing it down to an effect in a song versus we got to hear wind for 40 minutes and then
right.
But at the same time, they're starting to get access, because they've got a name behind them. Even as bad as like Adam Our Mother was, I think he went like number one in England, all over here in the US. And it was like, But they're now getting like access. They're getting access now to like Abbey Road studio. Yeah. All this equipment that the Beatles are recording on, White Album, other types of,
and they're hobnobbing with everybody too.
And hobnobbing, and they meet Alan Parsons, and they're all
Frank
people. Zappa, they were jamming with. Yeah. So now they got all this equipment, and they wanted to use all of it. And I'm going to use everything you've got in this studio.
Yeah, 24 tracks, 32 tracks. Yeah, they were. And it shows with echoes, all the experimentation. That had to be a lot of jams finally just pieced together.
And the songwriting, too, is just the different sonic textures they get on this album. You go from a badass song like One of These Days to this just beautiful sing-along song like Fearless, fearlessly the idiot face the crowd, smile.
Saint-Tropez, that's a great one.
It's just the songwriting is getting really fucking good at this point. They're like, hey, let's actually put some effort into writing songs instead of just banging on pots and pans.
You want to know a little tidbit? The Echoes, Rick Wright, he hits that very first note that you hear where he hits that keyboard, that ping sound. That's like he said that's a note. It's a B. I'm not a musician, but he says that's a B, and they got everything just right. He hits that note, and the whole rest of the band said, because they didn't have any idea what they were about to write, and he hits that note, and they're like, holy shit.
Yeah.
And they just started jamming, and they wrote the Echoes based off of just like that is like the most perfect note I have ever heard. Let's jam.
Yeah.
And that's how that actually started, which is pretty cool.
And each time you went to see them, when after 87, when they were coming back around, you were just bringing all of these memories, all these moments, and they just wowed you visually. They were just, their stage show was by far, it just shut you down,
They were a lot like Tool in a way, and kind of being at least
very much so. I would say Tool is
in the dark. And
how Mr. Clean were they like Tool? Finish what you were saying.
I mean, just how when they would do a live show, they didn't want the focus to be on the band members, so they would stay sometimes in the dark and
have
Rod and David Gilmour was not like out spotlighting and trying to get in the spotlight. They wanted the lights and everything. It wanted to be more about the sound and the light show, and not about them. They were snobs, freaking musical snobs, man.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the live show, the next thing they did before they did Obscured by Clouds, they did a concert film called Live at Pompeii, which is
that's actually after. That's actually after Obscured by Clouds.
Are you sure?
Yeah. Yeah. But
Saucer Fuel, set this one. Okay, well then let's talk about Obscured by
Clouds or something. That's Pompeii.
Pompeii was recorded in 1971. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Obscured by Clouds was released in 72. So I'm not sure. I think Pompeii was first.
I guess I got them reversed. Pompeii is incredible to listen to that concert. It's not a concert, but
It's a live performance in front of nobody.
Gilmour is on fire there. Just the slightest effortless little ping, and it's brilliant. He is just on fire there. Like his white hot talent in that movie, and the movie's amazing.
The movie's great, man.
Yeah.
Interviews, like they're all sitting there eating at like the lunch table, just being a bunch of wise asses and stuff. They're all a bunch of pricks. You're trying to interview them. They're like,
a lot of these
like smart ass all the time, and
a lot of these
shit. You can tell.
A lot of these musicians, these genius musicians, if you watch their early interviews, like Dylan and the Beatles, they're just total wise asses. But what's so great about the interviews is they're just brimming with confidence,
Yeah, but it's also nervous. I feel like they're thumbing their nose at the guy with the camera because
for sure,
like a insecure nervousness. But
probably I guess that comes along with being a prick, there's always some insecurity, but it's just great to watch. But the history behind this is that the filmmaker Adrian Mabin, I guess that's how you pronounce his name, wanted to do a film where Pink Floyd's music was being played over a bunch of paintings. These are Magritte and Jean Tingley and Giorgio de Chirico or whatever these artists that this guy liked. And he wanted to show the paintings with the music over it. And it basically it didn't happen. He proposed it to a TV station or TV studio, and they rejected it. Then he goes on holiday to Naples, and he's visiting Pompeii as like a tourist. And then that's where the idea hits him. He's like, holy fuck, I should bring them down here and just play in the middle of this. So
I'm surprised no one else has done something in these thousands years old arenas.
Amphitheaters.
The acoustics are still there.
Because it's too hard. That's the one thing, man. Pink Floyd, those guys, they worked hard. They were willing to put the work in, even in tough conditions. They didn't make any money off that live in Pompeii until a bunch of years later.
Yeah, I think it was released as a movie, and they eked some,
and even some of the live, some of the recordings on that, it's not even done from Pompeii because
it's just in the problems. Yeah. The movie itself or the video, when you had VHS, it went out of print and you couldn't get this thing forever. And there was a time where, the early 2001, 2, where everything was just being dumped on the internet and you could rip it LimeWire.
The original Napster.
Yeah, I had somebody graciously had put up the soundtrack to Live at Pompeii, and I had as MP3s, I had these songs, and I felt like I had the Holy Grail because you couldn't get it anywhere. As it is, you can't get Live at Pompeii unless you get that early years box, which now with streaming, you don't have to drop a ton of money to get it.
I still have the VHS Live at Pompeii. I just got nothing I can play it on. But
it's cool to have.
Absorb it by osmosis. But so then the next album is actually another Barbet Schroeder soundtrack. He did a film called La Vallée, and the soundtrack. There's a bunch of people in the jungle.
Horny. Bunch of horny people.
Yeah.
Oh shit!
The album cover is two naked people floating in the water.
Nice. Out of focus apparently.
Yeah.
So this is another one where for me, they hit their stride with metal, and the real sequel to metal is "Wish You Were Here," or the Dark Side of the Moon is a real sequel to metal, in my opinion, because this is like hearkening back to more and stuff like that. In my opinion, it's just not too
it's
memorable.
It's just noodling, another soundtrack, and they'd been doing it for so long. So it's like
Craig,
a little side project before they do their brilliant,
What were you gonna say?
Snags. Sorry.
Yes.
What I was going to say is that you're exactly right. For a long time, I thought I knew, I'd listened to every Pink Floyd album like 1,000 times. And I always thought that Obscured by Clouds came before Metal just because it's what made sense in my head.
Right.
And then when someone said, dude, you're wrong. Obscured was right. It was after Metal. I'm like, what? That's not right.
Because it was another, hey, why don't you guys come drop acid and noodle around for a while and I'll write you a check and it'll be a soundtrack again. Do another one of those. And they just did it,
They're still good, though. It's still a really good album, even though it was a step back. I love Obscured by Clouds.
I like Obscured by Clouds when it's on random and, you're hearing other Pink Floyd songs. And I mean, there's worse albums out there for sure.
No, I always liked it. Yeah, there's some shitty ones on there. I was trying to remember.
And those guys have done solo albums even back then, some obscure little side projects that were just really bizarre. So
yeah, isn't that the one with Seamus with the dog is on there freaking howling and
yeah.
That's Metal.
Yeah, that's on Metal.
Seamus is on Metal.
Yeah.
I like that song.
I was reading up on something today. I can't remember who's. It was actually another band, like a pretty famous band. It was one of their dogs, like the lead singer's dog, and Pink Floyd borrowed that dude's dog, to do that part.
Oh, nice. Really?
Yeah.
So
he's Seamus. They have a dog at the Pompeii concert, don't they? Didn't they bring the dog out? It's the same dog.
Yeah.
Is the lead singer of Humble Pie. I remember.
Oh, okay. Steve Marriott?
Steve Marriott.
Yeah, Steve Marriott.
That's
exactly.
Fucking hilarious. Dog. Steve Marriott's dog. Oh, that's great.
And they have there's another song somewhere. I believe it's called Mademoiselle Knobs, and it's that dog, and they're doing more of that playing and the dog howling. It's somewhere Pink Floyd.
Yeah, you're right. That was Metal.
So let's move on to the masterpiece they dropped next, which is Dark Side of the Moon.
Yeah.
Take it away. Either one of you.
Used to play this album all the time in high school. If you bought the vinyl, you got a poster of just that Prism. I had that poster over my bed for probably 20 years. And there was another poster of the pyramids at Giza, all alternate light or whatever, and stickers. It was just such an amazing record. And the stats for this record are ridiculous.
I would say Snags and Silky, that's this record, if someone was to tell me, what's the best rock and roll, what's the best record album, of all time? If I picked Dark Side of the Moon, I would not be ashamed of my pick. It's a freaking masterpiece from the start to finish, when you first turn it on and you hear that heart beating and then it kicks in, breathe in the air and then it just goes all the way to the very, very end. I mean, it's just no miss. I mean, there's not a miss. There's not a bad song on here. They worked their ass off in the studio to get this thing perfect. They recorded over and over and over again, and Roger Waters wrote this whole thing and brought it to them. And he actually even there's some like garage recordings of him, like where he brought tapes in of him playing the guitar parts too. Mm-hmm. He'd be sitting out in the shed at night playing stuff, recording this whole thing and bring it in to the guys and say, here, here's what we got to do. And then of course they added their talents. But I mean, this was Raj like saying, this, and it's great writing. This thought provoking. You know, it's
like
it's
you
a
said, the
masterpiece.
very first note all the way to the very end, the last note. This was one of those albums where you're turning the volume up as it's fading out, trying to make sure you don't miss anything. You know.
Yeah,
The
all
last
the
part-
lyrics.
The very last part almost didn't get included, but Roger, that Eclipse, isn't it Eclipse, the very last song?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is.
It's like a minute and a half or something, or almost 2 minutes. And the album was done, and Roger's like, man, it's just not quite right, man. Let's add this in here.
Mhm.
And that got put in kind of at the last minute. And of course, I mean, it's awesome. It sounds awesome in concert when that freaking whole stadium starts rocking that giant heartbeat. Boom, boom.
Yeah.
You know, boom, boom. You know, you're just like, oh yeah, man, here we go. Dark Side of the Moon.
Yeah.
And the whole spin-off, which you never hear of an Aerosmith laser show or a Fog Hat laser show, but there was this whole cultural spin-off where this band's the only band to get their own laser show, and the Pink Floyd laser show kind of became a thing, you know. And this album was the heart of those laser shows, you know. It wasn't Steam.
You know, it's a shame.
What's
in
that?
England, the UK, this didn't make it number one. It got to number 2 for like 5 weeks, and then fell back a little bit. Yeah, it never made number 1.
It was in the top one.
In the US, it went number 1, and it bounced in and out of the top 40 for like 20 years.
20 years. Yeah. It's in the Billboard's top 100 for like 25 years. Yeah.
Insanity.
Yeah.
No, I just don't know of another. You're never going to have another record do that, you know?
Yeah. Now this record really put them on the map. I think they haven't. It was an interesting history with people's perception of them, because like their management company, when they kicked Syd Barrett out, even though he was just clearly going nuts, the management company stuck with Syd Barrett. Those Syd Barrett solo albums are the result of his Pink Floyd's former management company sticking with him. Nobody really thought they were going to continue on without Syd Barrett, and then they struggle for a while to find their identity. They release a good solid album with metal, then they go back to noodling for this soundtrack, and then they just blow everybody's fucking minds, totally surpass anything that Syd Barrett ever did with this album. It's cultural splash that just reverberates for years.
If you look at it, Dark Side of the Moon was released in 73. They might have been working on Dark Side as early as 71, you know.
They were.
They might have, yeah.
So, you know, Obscured by Clouds is just, hey, we need some more money. Let's, you know.
But I don't think anybody expected something like this from them.
No.
I really don't. I think, you know.
If you play Obscured by Clouds and then you tell me, hey, this next album is dark, you're going to be like, huh, no way, you know.
Yeah.
But the one thing we should mention with Dark Side of the Moon is if you start The Wizard of Oz on the third lion roar,
it's all synced up. It's fucking weird.
Up, and it blows your mind for 45 minutes. And the problem is the album ends and the movie still goes for another 40 minutes. And you're
the minute they land in the Emerald City, money. Ding, ding, ding,
yeah. Oh, it's just ridiculous. Great Gig in the Sky.
Yeah, I've done that before.
Yeah, we did that at Arthur's house way back.
Oh, you were there? Yeah.
That's
where I saw it. Yeah.
Blew me away.
That's fucking
Here's
hilarious.
a travesty, though. Here's a travesty. I got no respect for like Rolling Stone magazine, but of course there's
it's turned into slightly below toilet paper at this point, but it used to be a respectable rock magazine. Yeah.
Dark Side of the Moon, well, a little ways back, they said was when they did their top 500 album, rankings, is 44th.
What?
I'm just like, 44.
That's the beginning of the end for Rolling. It's obviously number one.
So like, okay,
let's maybe Sergeant Pepper You know, there's a few albums you could mention in there that have the same cultural impact, but it's definitely not 43 albums above it.
No.
Anybody's reality.
Mr. Clean, I think there was a Rolling Stone top 50 guitarists or something, and
we were looking at that.
They've got like I don't even know.
Prince is number one.
Yeah,
they had like it was some
Joan Baez or
there was some modern girl pop.
That's
in
who
there.
I'm talking. Yeah,
it wasn't Joan Baez. It was some modern, and it wasn't as bad. It wasn't as bad as Taylor Swift, but it was like somewhere in between Taylor Swift and Joan Baez was like above. I don't know, above Richie Blackmore. I mean, it's just stupid. It was just
you're like, huh?
dumb.
You know.
Anyways,
one thing.
Let's stop wasting time on Rolling Stone.
Yeah.
Podcast.
One more thing about Dark Side of the Moon. They recorded that at Abbey Road, and can you imagine being there at Abbey Road? You got Alan Parsons. He's like 24. He's there producing this, being around all these, like they were just in the groove on this album. There's all these people from other bands are just dropping in. People
Paul McCartney,
Beatles are dropping in. What's going on
Paul
here?
McCartney
That's so cool.
And Roger wanted specifically people just to read what he had written. And McCartney starts riffing and just wanting to be Paul McCartney, and he's like, "No, man, no." And so I don't know if you have. I think they erased Paul McCartney's.
Paul McCartney was going to be in the album.
Yeah, well, he's at the end where people are like,
Yeah, at the end
there is no Dark Side of the Moon. Matter of fact,
you hear all the people talking.
Like
you hear people talking. I'm not afraid of dying. I really never, all that kind of stuff. Roger Waters put like 15 questions down on a piece of paper and started asking and interviewing people. And as they answered them, they were recording that. And then it's a mishmash of all those people that they patched into the music. And he was like, Paul McCartney was one of them. And he's like, he was too defensive and blah, blah, blah. And he cut him out of it. No Paul McCartney.
He was acting all cheeky and shit.
Right.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Paul wasn't
there.
Paul wasn't getting the vibe.
Yeah, I would have liked to have heard Paul because he was just so damn funny. But
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but if you have your mind set on how you want it, you don't want comedy. You want But
Roger was a prick. So
Paul was doing the my name, look up my number kind of routine, probably.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Dennis Bell. So
then you jump to an album that I literally played. I had a cassette of "Wish You Were Here." That there was no the writing gone. It was
you played it so much the writing wore off the side.
Yeah.
And I had this on vinyl, and I played the shit out of it.
Sharpie that said Pink and Floyd.
Yeah.
So I knew
this is another perfect album. It's just perfect,
and they had hit a stride where they could do let's break up a long jam, and then we just got to throw 3 songs in. I do know by 75 they would come in, do an album, do a tour, but they were just sick of each other, and they would just not see each other for 3 or 4 years, and then come back and do another album.
Well, that's probably smart. The interesting in the story that a lot of people know, but we gotta tell it is that Roger Waters writes this song about Syd Barrett, "Shine On You Crazy Diamond," and they're in the studio recording it, and this fat guy kind of wanders into the studio, and they're in between takes or something. They're talking to this guy, and they don't quite know who he is. They're like, we know this guy, I think, but they're being polite to him. And in the middle of the conversation, they realized, holy shit, this is Syd Barrett. And this fat, overweight Syd Barrett happened to wander into the studio. They hadn't seen him since he left the band years earlier, happens to wander in while they're recording a song about him. And they don't recognize, looks so different than before. They don't even recognize him at first.
Yeah,
and that
they're
just
like, holy shit, that was Syd
blew
Barrett.
their fucking minds. They're like,
But they
we're
didn't
writing a
talk to
song
him.
about. Yeah, they didn't
Nobody
talk to him.
talked to him.
Yeah.
No, I mean, they just like, he was gone, and they were like, holy shit, that was
Syd Barrett.
What the hell's
Yeah,
going on?
that's just crazy that he would wander in while they're doing the song about him. But that's a good story. But yeah,
but at the same time, it's like, awesome and just perfect song, but to be just ironic, it's like, for crying out loud, get over Syd Barrett, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, please.
It's a good song. It's not like the 34th song where he's wailing about his dad. This is a really well-written, good fucking song.
You can take Shine On Part 1 through 5 and 6 through 9 and sandwich that together and listen to it as one long song is a cool. I had a mixtape where I put those two together, and that was pretty cool.
Every vehicle, just to tell you, I mean, I love Wish You Were Here. I think it's a perfect album. Every single vehicle I've ever owned, the first song I throw through the speaker system on my vehicle is Welcome to the Machine, because it will test out your woofers, your bass. You'll be like, damn it, I got to replace the stereo. It can't handle that. All that sound at the beginning of Wish You Were, or Welcome to the Machine. I'll be like, damn it, I got to upgrade the stereo. It can't handle Welcome to the Machine.
Right.
That fucking song is incredible.
Foo Fighters do a great cover of Have a Cigar. Mid 2005, somewhere in there. That's cool. But Wish You Were Here is an incredible song.
That's got the famous lyrics, you're really great. That's really what I think, by the way, which one's pink, which apparently actually happened to them. Some industry cats talking them up, and it's like, which one's pink?
Yeah, that's funny. Of course, by now they're making like gajillions of dollars too, and they're.
I would think by 75 that they were.
Well, after Dark Side, because that was back when you could make money off of album sales.
Yeah,
it's before you're streaming for pennies on the dollar. People actually had to go out and buy the album. That's why concerts were so cheap back then. They did the concert to get you to buy the album. Just pay $15 so we can cover the cost of the concert.
Dude, you could go see Zeppelin for $7.
I know.
$10 on the day.
Don't even get me started.
You're gonna sit through John Bonham playing 40-minute Moby Dicks.
Back when I started going to concerts, it was up to $15, maybe $11, and then $15 soon after that. But I was like, fucking 10th row Van Halen 1984 tour for $15, 10th row Iron Maiden for $11.
I saw Leonard Skinner for probably $18.
Yeah, it's just in anyways, so they had to be filthy fucking rich after Dark Side of the Moon.
Yeah, and another member of the band is the album cover company Hypnosis, who just did so many fucking incredible covers. Just you look at the cover of Wish You Were Here, the two mannequins and one's on fire. And
did they do Houses of the Holy?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Presence,
Hypnosis
I think,
was doing everything. But Shine On or Wish You Were Here, you open the album cover, there's a pair of legs sticking up out of the water. The guy in the suitcase in the desert. There was all these just amazing photos.
It's impossible to do a podcast on all of Pink Floyd. I'm sitting here thinking, we didn't even talk about Great Gig in the Sky off of Dark Side of the Moon and how all that went down with that singer Corey. What's his name?
Tell the story, dude.
Well, that lady, her name was Corey something, and they
Tori, I think. Let's see here.
Yeah, I got it. She let me find it. I got it here. Just 1 second. Yeah. What was her name?
Claire Tori.
Claire Tori. I'm combining it and calling her Corey. So Claire Tori, they had do this instrumental by Rick Wright, Great Gig in the Sky. And they were like, man, this is good, but it's just freaking missing something. Yeah. And it was Roger Waters. It was like, we need a singer. And it was his idea. He's like, we need to get somebody to come here and sing. And they brought her in there. And somebody in their production crew was like, well, I know a really good singer, so-and-so. And she was like, that's a weekend. Yeah, I can make 30 pounds today, by coming in on a weekend as opposed to my 15 pounds, during the week. So weekend work pays double. So she went down there and it was David Gilmour that was like coaching her, like telling her, there's no word. They're like, she's like, what? There's no words. They're like, no, we need a sound, and they started coaching her and she started, doing her thing and wailing. She thought she was like wailing and stuff. And they were all like, man, you almost got it, and she started getting into it. And then they recorded that. And she did not even know that it ended up on the album. She was walking down a road in London and saw the Dark Side of the Moon in the window, pulled that shit out and took it home. And she's like, it was awesome. She didn't know that she was on there. She's like, oh, that was terrible. I did a horrible job. Man,
she assumed they left it on the cutting room floor.
Yeah, but I've never been to a concert by Floyd or even like Brit Floyd or Australian Pink Floyd where these like incredible cover bands. They got these ladies come out and they sing that Great Gig in the Sky. You cry, man. You can't help it. You just like start crying.
What was that Pink Floyd cover band that you and me and Steve went to see at the Fox?
Brit Floyd.
Was that
they're freaking incredible?
Yeah, and their Claire Tori fucking rocked. She nailed that shit.
I always put that song with "Gimme Shelter," where that chick sings.
Oh yeah.
Just crushes.
But you know what? Other people in music, like even the guys from Pink Floyd were like saying, yeah, but when you play that song, with her singing like that, it's the most like. All kind of magazines voted it like the best like fucking song, it's the best song to like be, getting it on with your woman,
Oh, absolutely.
They said it gave you like extra power. Doing it during that song being played that you had extra.
You get to hear. You get to hear an extra woman screaming while you're.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
So I think everybody should try that out as soon as possible.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think part 2 to Wish You Were Here was Animals. Animals is one of my all-time favorite Pink Floyd albums, mainly for its obscurity. It's like there's not a song in there that you immediately hear on the radio. Or
there's one, I'm trying to remember which one of these gets played on the radio where he says, what's he?
Pigs.
It's usually Pigs.
What's the chorus there where he says you are Charade you are, which is British pronunciation of charade, but he's basically making fun of politicians, charade you are, which is true. So that's good.
Yeah.
But
y'all may remember the earlier podcast on our Desert Island top 10. I had Animals on there. And then after
I love this record.
After getting prepared for this podcast, I was like, damn it, I should have picked Dark Side of the Moon. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No, I love this record, Animals, so much.
it's a really good album.
Another heavy staple for me in high school was Animals. Just love this record.
I'm late to the party on Animals because in high school I had metal. I had like a greatest hits from the Syd Barrett years, and then I had metal, Wish You Were Here, Dark Side, and The Wall on vinyl. And I didn't have Animals, and I didn't start listening to Animals until streaming. And I was just like, holy shit,
wow.
I missed this album. There's this
No,
major gap.
I was playing these as they were being released on CD because I'd want a CD player on the radio, and I was getting, I was building my CD collection, and I just Pink Floyd, whatever the next, pounced on it to have it on CD.
I was in 11th grade. I went over to after wrestling practice. Went over to David Gilmour-led's house. And we went in his older brother Mike's room, and Mike had a stereo, and he had Animals on vinyl. And they put the headphones on me, and I heard Animals for the first time. I remember right where I was, and I was just like blown away. I was like, "Holy cow, man! Just leave me alone. Just let me listen to this thing."
Oh,
I mean, it was so,
just
good.
Starting with that acoustic guitar, and you're like, "Oh my god!" It just shuts you down. And it's full circle because Pigs on the Wing Part 2 takes you out,
There's a lot of recurring themes like that.
You see the band. You see the band starting to fracture a little bit.
Oh, absolutely.
This
is really the last cohesive record.
I seem to remember Richard Wright saying that was the first album where he was. Because he did. If you look at the songwriting credits, at least as far as the music goes, even though Roger Waters was writing all the lyrics, "Wish You Were Here," Richard Wright is contributing to the music, and metal, he's contributing to the music. But it really was, he said, with Animals was when Roger Waters started kind of hogging all the songwriting duties as far as the music completely, and it was. The relations were starting to get frosty, and then we'll talk about The Wall, but that's when it went south.
Yeah, by the time The Wall came, he wanted Wright out of the band. He had no use for him at all. And I'm sorry, just like the Doors, Richard Wright is to Pink Floyd what Ray Manzarek was to the Doors. You can't.
Yeah,
and if you go back, Richard Wright was there right at the beginning. Like he founded the band just as much as Roger Waters did,
Yeah. And he played on The Wall, but he didn't play the live shows. He was out by the time they were playing those live shows for The Wall.
Really?
But but he was on the album. But it was really rough.
So he's not on stage in 1980 when they did
Nope. He was gone. Yeah.
And
I would add one thing.
They only played two shows.
Mr. Clean wants to add one thing.
No, that's all good. We might have a little bit of lag. No, I was going to say that, try to imagine any of those songs off of Animals without Richard Wright playing his part.
Or Wish You Were Here.
Like Dogs. Like Dogs when he's like doing all the animal sound effects, the dogs barking and all that he's doing with keyboards and synthesizers and all kinds of cool stuff.
I don't understand it.
Roger's just a dick, man.
Yeah, 100%.
And it really starts. I see that personality, and here's where we're going to start disagreeing. I'll have a different opinion with you guys, but I start to see that really coming out in The Wall. For me, there's like 5 good songs on there, and the rest of it is Roger Waters whining about his dad dying. But let's go through track by track because it's a classic album, and I know you guys love the whole thing.
To me, and chime in here, Mr. Clean. Pink Floyd, The Wall is you go from the movie, and that movie was like the ultimate midnight movie, high school. Everybody went to see it, and it was to me, it was all more about a rock star who loses his dad, never knew him, but he's a rock star, so it's almost autobiographical. Roger Waters being the rock star, but then just all of the craziness, but he brings back the Nazi symbolism and everything. It was just a very trippy movie. You had to see that movie. I mean, I watched that thing constantly because each time I watched it, I would figure some more out of what it was really about.
And it didn't come out now. Just see.
I think it came out in 82.
Yeah, the movie comes out in 82. So I was misremembering my my summer camp. It was not 78, it was 79. The album comes out in 79. And when that single drops, it was like Dark Side of the Moon all over again, except they had this big ass radio single with it that Another Brick in the Wall.
Part 2. Yeah.
Yeah, the kids across the country went fucking nuts. I just remember being in a school bus, 1979, the first summer. I went to that summer camp was 78. And I remember there was this really cool dude in the summer camp named Kelly. He was like the older kid with long hair. And he would still kiss. And here comes the Kiss reference for this episode. He would still kiss magazines. He would go into gas stations and look through the rock magazines, and he'd rip out all the Kiss pictures and steal them. So he brought this book to summer camp and had all these Kiss pictures from the Kiss magazines. Loved Kiss, right? And this is 78. And so that's when I start getting into Kiss. I'm like, oh, yeah, Kiss is cool. And then I go back 79, and Dynasty had come out. And he's like, I don't really like Kiss that much anymore. You could just tell. He was like, this album had dropped. And just riding that school bus, fucking 40 kids in the school bus just screaming the lyrics. I'll never forget it.
Leave those kids alone. And the guitar solo at the end of that, man, they were just grooving, man. Just playing the bass. Dave's just grooving with the guitar.
Gilmour is just so talented.
Oh, right. Yeah, Roger Gilmour's a fucking beast on guitar.
Dave,
David Gilmour. And but why I brought all this up is because you're talking about the movie, right? But the album was out for 3 years before there was.
79.
So first the album drops, and all that imagery is there. But then the movie comes out 3 years later. It's an instant midnight movie classic. That played at midnight movies on the weekends throughout the rest of the 80s, basically, as long as you had midnight.
Snags and Silky, I got to tell you, man, I saw the first showing of The Wall in Atlanta. It was at Perimeter Cinema there in Dunwoody at midnight, and we stayed up overnight to get the tickets to get into that thing. We were there, and I saw the first showing, and it was mind-blowing. I mean, it was mind-blowing to see that because, of course, I already had the album. I bought it at the Book Nook used.
Nice.
And somebody had drawn their own graffiti on the inside, like Pink Floyd, The Wall. Like, why did you write that on the inside of the album cover? It's already says Pink Floyd, The Wall on here. Why did you fuck this up? But I just wanted, the music. So I was like, I still have that, by the way, with that writing in there. And
that's cool.
Man, that was a great album. I knew every word. I probably still do know every word, every lyric.
I went to Fantasyland, and I found a 45 gatefold. It had the Scream in the front, and you opened it, and it had When the Tigers Broke Free. And for the longest time, you couldn't get that song anywhere. It was a single tie-in to the movie. And I bought it for, I don't know, $3. I would have given them $50 for that thing. I was so excited to have that.
I actually meant to ask Syd Barrett earlier when he called in on the phone if he was here still crying about When the Tigers Broke Free and all that stuff. So
I love that song, though.
Get him on the
I
phone.
just like the
You can
imagery
ask
and
him.
all. And we should have. But
Let's
yeah,
go. Let's go
Warning
through-
about the Tigers breaking free.
Stop whining. Yeah, right. Do we want to go through and just look at these tracks and talk about them?
No. It's a classic record. I played
Right.
the living shit out of this in high school. Craig doesn't like it.
I didn't say I didn't like it. I'll tell you this. I'm going to tell you the songs that I like. I like Another Brick in the Wall Part 2. I like Young Lust. I like Hey You, Comfortably Numb, Run Like
Obviously.
Hell, and that's it. That's all you need.
Yeah.
Nice, good EP. Slap that shit out as a nice, good, solid EP, and then hang it up. Don't do another fucking album afterwards, which is more bitching about,
Yeah, the final cut. I know every Pink Floyd album up to The Wall.
Right.
I played the living shit out of them, and the final cut does kind of extend that vibe of The Wall.
It's the songs the other band members rejected.
Yeah,
weren't going to be on The Wall, and he just brings them back. This is going to be the next album.
Yeah, I don't know the final cut that much. It was the one I didn't have for decades, and I picked it up because they did a reissue, and it had When the Tigers Broke Free on that, and so I grabbed it. But to this day, I couldn't tell you.
I remember the big
Now John.
But Not Now John is a rocking. I really like that song. I think Not Now John fucking rocks.
Yeah.
And that I remember when the album came out, and that was on the radio all the time.
Yeah.
And I don't think I got the album. I think some friends of mine had it, and you'd play it once or twice while you're smoking some weed or whatever. But
it's somebody had the cassette, and I thought the cover was cool, but I never. I'm so unfamiliar with that one.
It's really a Roger Waters album.
Solo album.
It's his first solo record, really.
Yeah, it is.
But I actually enjoyed listening to it. I think it probably had a lot to do with my age. I was either a senior in high school or first year of college when that came out.
Yeah.
So you can imagine there was ginormous anticipation.
Right.
After The Wall, about, you're at that age, you're freaking 18 years old, you get ready to rock, to the new Pink Floyd album. Your expectations are so high. It was disappointing. But
I feel like
listened to it a lot and liked
it. It's an extension of The Wall. It is just the next.
Yeah. Which doesn't need to be extended,
Side 6.
Add Not Now John to that EP I was telling you about. You got a solid fucking EP, 6-song EP or whatever. The other thing about this album is there's no Richard Wright anywhere on this thing.
Not on.
It's Roger, David, Nick, and then you got a couple. Michael Kamen plays piano. Andy Brown plays Hammond organ. Just these no-name fuckers they bring in. And so it's not really Pink Floyd, it's 3 guys. Roger Waters is just really being a dick to David Gilmour and Nick Mason at this point, and they're just like, Roger Waters decides to go off and do his solo career and probably assumes that that's the end of Pink Floyd in his mind. It's like when Ritchie Blackmore left Deep Purple in the
to do Rainbow. Yeah.
No, more like when he left Deep Purple in the mid 80s. He thought that's the end of the band, and they just get his name from the Dixie Dregs to take his place. Yeah, Steve Morse, and they keep going, and that's what happens here. So, and I remember when this was happening too. I remember reading in some rock magazine, Roger Waters saying, "I can't believe they're going to do a Pink Floyd album without me." He said that's like the Who doing an album without Pete Townsend, and it kind of was. And at the time, because he was such a big figure for them, but it was a really successful album. It's not my cup of tea, but I know you guys like it, and there's a momentary lapse of reason.
I went to see Pink Floyd because I love that band so much. So the chance to go see that reunion tour, I had to go.
Right, and by reunion tour, it's literally 2 years after the last album.
which is crazy because to me,
no, 4 years. I'm sorry, 4 years.
4 years?
It's 4 years after the last album, which is nothing these days.
I wasn't really familiar with the final cut anyway. So to me,
Yeah.
this was The Wall, and then, oh my God, they're putting a new album out.
Right.
And I was at the right age. I fell right in. I loved, there's a lot of stuff on here that's really good. Dogs of War.
For me, like,
I was, radio friendly.
When it came out, I was just skeptical. I was like, yeah, they're just trying to cash in. There's no Roger Waters. Just before I knew how much of an asshole Roger Waters.
Right.
Now that I understand what went down, I'm really glad they stayed together and they stuck him the middle finger and they were successful, really successful. Even the next album after this, which wasn't great, sold millions of albums. And
if I might comment, that Delicate Sound of Thunder. I'm in college, when that came out.
Oh, the live album?
Great. We were rocking it, and then or Momentary Lapse of Reason. Sorry, that came out while I was in college, and then Delicate Sound of Thunder came out. The double album, with the live playing all that cool stuff. That's a bad jammer right there.
Pulse was good too, and they were hitting you with these tours and these live albums and the DVD or the VHS, where you really were put into their vision of just these pristine images and the music, and no one was that detailed with their product more than Pink Floyd.
My issue with this album is it's got a real production-wise, it's got a real 80s sheen to it. Like it's and I've tried to get into it, and I just doesn't stick. It doesn't annoy me like Final Cut does at all. I'm like, interesting stuff.
I was growing up in the 80s, man.
I think you're definitely hearing. You're hearing what appealed to everyone at the time. But
I'm glad they did it. I'm glad they did it, and I'm glad that a lot of people got a lot out of it. It was important to show Roger Waters that he could be dispensed with.
But those live albums that came out in between were just as popular because people were getting a chance to, oh my God, they're dusting off Interstellar Overdrive, So that was really cool. The next one was Division Bell, and I just never got into that. I was really done, but I still went and I saw that tour because they played at Bobby Dodd Stadium, and they were playing the entire Dark Side of the Moon, so you had to go see that.
Oh yeah, cool. What did you think of Division Bell, Mr. Clean?
I was at the Bobby Dodd concert. Of course, it
was all cloudy.
Yeah, I bought the CD. Of course, I listened to it. I was like, I mean, there's some good songs. It's super high produced, almost like, come on, it's almost like AI took over from the last album and came out with a new. Another album that just sounds the same, nothing new, nothing like really inspiring. There was that one song on there, I think, with called "Keep Talking" with Stephen Hawking voice at the beginning of it, where it's got a pretty cool song. It could have been a lot better. I think that's probably the best song on there. But at that point, you're kind of like, all right, I think the days are over.
But that one sold something like 7 million copies. I mean, it was.
Oh yeah, they were on fire. I mean,
financially, it was very successful.
It sounds great. I mean, but you could also be listening to like Yanni or some other kind of Tangerine Dream or just something that just sounds great.
I never really got into Tangerine Dream.
Yeah, but what I mean.
Yeah, totally.
So that album comes out, they do a tour, and then they basically just go dormant for a while until 2005. Bob Geldof is doing another charity concert. The Live 8 reunion in 2005 is this big charity concert for the awareness of make poverty history. You know, Bob Geldof basically he had one good song with Boomtown Rats, and then he makes his living doing charities after that.
Yeah.
And he acted in The Wall. That's an important thing
Yeah.
he was the lead guy in The Wall. So basically, Bob Geldof talks all four members into getting back together to play some songs at this event. And this is July 2nd, 2005. David Gilmour, Roger Waters, Nick Mason, Richard Wright. First time all four had performed together since 81, apparently. And they do 23-minute set of Breathe and Money and Wish You Were Here and Comfortably Numb. And it's on YouTube. I'll link it in the click pit. And it's just phenomenal for them to all be back together again. Basically, they share a group hug at the end. Roger Waters is really into it. And then afterwards, Roger makes an overture. Hey, you guys want to get back together, and I don't know if he wanted to record or do another tour and cash in, but Gilmour was just like Gilmour kind of held his nose through the whole thing. He had just had enough of Waters, so he did this. That was the last time they all played together.
Yeah, you can see Raj hugging everybody, and everybody else is kind of like all stiff with their arms down, like
right.
But see, and you look at Deep Purple getting inaugurated into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and the entire band said, "If Richie Blackmore shows up, we are the fuck out of here."
Yeah.
Whereas they don't
like
even,
when
they didn't even want to see him.
When Kiss got inducted, everybody wanted them to play some songs, and it was all they could do just to get the four of them on stage together, just to wave at the crowd.
And that sucks because you know what, the fans put you there. Hey guys, let's just play.
Right?
They know how to do it. They know how to get together and just do it. They don't have to hang out.
But, so three years after that, Richard Wright dies. So there's no more possibilities of a full reunion after that.
Yeah.
And then 2014, Pink Floyd drops The Endless River, which tell us about that, Silky. It's outtakes from
Division Bell. It's just stuff that Richard Wright had done. So in a way, it's the guys remembering Richard Wright. And again, like Mr. Clean said, it's nothing new. It's I think I played it once. It's on the playlist for the playlist I created is really gives you an entire, every Pink Floyd that you need to have. I even included Biding My Time at the very end to kind of artistically bring it back to the early stuff, because that was a single that was on Relics. And
so this was the David Gilmour, Richard Wright, Nick Mason era.
Yeah.
Post Roger Waters. Yeah. Okay.
And it's okay. It to me, it's like another soundtrack noodling thing.
What were you going to say, Mr. Clean?
Oh, just that, that's like you had a couple beers watching the football game on Sunday afternoon, and you're ready to pass out on the couch. So you put that on and go right to sleep.
Yeah. Yeah.
How's that for a review?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, it's a pleasant sound. It's what you would expect.
And
beautiful guitar, super mellow. Go right to sleep.
Float down the river. Yeah.
That's fucking hilarious.
I will say that Nick Mason successfully got some people together and formed a band. I believe a Saucer Full of Secrets.
Saucer Full of Secrets. Yeah.
And for the sole purpose of, hey, some of that early shit was some good songs. So I do like what he did there.
It's also a way for him to keep paying the rent, probably.
Yeah. Well, obviously, but more so to revisit some shit back, Probably somebody like, dude, some of this shit's really good, and that's a live album. I have not checked that out, but I like that he was doing that. But
yeah, there's a podcast interview with him recently where he's basically just off the road. I think the guys interviewing him are playing in that band too. They had a podcast and interviewed him. It's an interesting interview, and Nick Mason has a great book about his life in Pink Floyd, which I highly recommend.
Yeah,
there's actually a book, an old book I had called Saucer Full of Secrets. If you can ever get your hands on that book, it is so awesome. It talks about all the giant acid parties that they were having down in the parks where all these different bands were playing. And you'd be, the Pink Floyd would be up there playing, and they would make these big giant jellos, like a big jello, like 2,000 gallon jello laced with acid. And everybody would just show up and start eating jello. And you'd be up there, playing on the stage, just playing Pink Floyd, and look down, there's Ringo Starr, and there's Mick Jagger and those kind of people out there. Everybody's like tripping balls. And
Frank Zappa jamming with Pink Floyd.
Golly, man. What a
the one thing we didn't mention with the animals thing is they had this giant pig that they inflated.
That was the debut of the pig was animals.
And the rope broke and the pig just goes flying through the whole countryside, and people calling and freaking out, and so they made that the cover where it's floating towards the factory. But we definitely needed to mention that. But that's all I got on Floyd. The key years, I think, are Metal up to The Wall.
I would agree. Roughly,
really fell apart. My nostalgia for The Wall is just the high school. I just played it every night.
I remember when I first met you in high school. You were just coming out of this phase where you were probably in 9th grade or something, and you were just coming out of this phase where you would keep a bottle of Wild Turkey in your locker.
Yes.
And you used to wear this black trench coat in this real dark phase, and so I could
Zeppelin
see you,
2 T-shirt.
I could see you going home and just putting on the headphones and listening to The Wall every night and commiserating about how miserable everything was.
I had a bit of a drinking problem.
Yeah. I remember that. All right. Well, Mr. Clean, why don't you take us out with some last words about Pink Floyd, since they're one of your top 3 bands here.
Yeah, I mean, it might be, if you had to press me on it, could be number 1, because I just can't imagine not being able to enjoy Pink Floyd. I think it's a band that, probably I appreciated, like in the time when you're in your late teenage and your early 20s and you're having lots of fun and you're just rocking out as much as possible. Pink Floyd was probably the band that I listened to the most, and, know every word, every guitar riff, everything. That's The Wall. I used to lay in bed at night. I had a situation where we had a uncle come stay at our house, and my little sister had to share my room with me, and I could sing the entire lyrics from The Wall at night to my little sister and put her to sleep. And and I just
that's cute.
Probably had the biggest impact. Like I said, every new car I've ever got, my next car, first thing I'm putting in, Welcome to the Machine. Let's see if it can handle, the Pink Floyd. So yeah, I love them. I got to see him 4 times in concert. I got to see Roger Waters, 3 times, David Gilmour 1 time, all the Brit Floyds, all the Australian Pink Floyds, even like last year when Chastain, laser show at Fernbank. Yeah, laser show down at the Fox. I went to also when they had that one. Yeah, so I mean, I'm just all in. They weren't perfect, but man, when they hit their stride for that series of albums. That's hard to beat. Really,
Yeah.
really hard to beat.
I feel like with Pink Floyd too is your arsenal. If you were classic rock or whatever you were listening to, you had all your heavy bands and scream bands and thrash bands or whatever, but you had Pink Floyd as a way to come down from all that. And they had heavy songs too, and it is
there are a few bands who could really rock the keyboards, and you can count them all on one hand. You got fucking Devo, you got Pink Floyd, you got Deep Purple, you got the Doors.
Yeah.
Leonard Skinner.
Yeah, you got some
piano.
Well, piano is a little different.
Billy Powell on the piano.
Piano. There's a lot of when you get to piano, there's a lot of rocking, but I'm talking about synthesizers. It's hard to make a synthesizer rock, and there's that handful of bands. I guess with Deep Purple it was more Hammond organ and shit.
Yeah. John Lord was a monster.
Yeah. So, anyways, yep. I think that's our way of agreeing with you, Mr. Clean. Thanks for being here and guiding us through this fucking monster of a band. It was about time we did this episode. Fucking episode 82.
82.
Pink Floyd. Yeah. All right. We got more coming up. Stay tuned over the next few weeks. We got some good shit planned. Peace out, motherfuckers.
Deuces.
Aces and traces. So good job. See you next time.